no one lives on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God.
Hallelujah. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also called the Sea of Tiberias. A large crowd kept following him because they saw the signs that he was doing for the sick. Jesus went up the mountain and sat down there with his disciples. Now, the Passover, the festival of the Jews, was near. When he looked up and saw a large crowd coming towards him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread for these people to eat?" He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 6 months' wages will not buy enough bread for each of them to get a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they among so many people?" Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was a great deal of grass in that place. So they sat down, about 5,000 in all. Then Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also the fish, and they ate as much as they wanted. When they were satisfied, he told his disciples, "Gather up the fragments left over so that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up, and from the fragments of the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten, they filled 12 baskets. When the people saw the sign that had been done, they began to say, "This indeed is the prophet who is to come into the world." When Jesus realized that they were about to come and take him by force and make him the king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Our Gospel reading today is from John chapter 6, starting from verse 1 to 15. And the verse 1 is very significant because it connects with next Sunday's reading, this Sunday's reading. It says, Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also called the Sea of Tiberias. In the Gospel reading of this coming Sunday, the disciples of Jesus are going to go to this place. That's where Peter said to them, let's go fishing. So they are going to go back there to the Sea of Tiberias. And Jesus is going to appear to them there. So our gospel reading today says, Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee, the Sea of Tiberias, and a large crowd came there. They kept following him. Anywhere he went, they kept following him. And so Jesus decided to feed them. Our text says there were 5,000 people. And so Jesus decided to feed 5,000. In the history of the people of Israel, there is no other time when over 5,000 people were fed miraculously except in Exodus chapter 16, when Moses prayed to God and manna fell from heaven to feed over 5,000 people. And it was the same thing that Jesus did. He becomes the new Moses. Now, our text says the Passover, the festival of the Jews, was near. The feeding of the 5,000 happened around the time of the Passover. And so Jesus becomes the new Passover when he offered himself at the Last Supper, also the feeding of the people. But there is a spiritual dimension to what we can learn from what Jesus did. When Andrew told Jesus, there is a young boy here who has 5 loaves. Now we are talking about bread, talking about loaves. And that's at the Last Supper, Jesus is going to take the bread. He's going to take, and that is what he's going to use. And so Jesus says, let the people sit down. Again, let's say that is like church. When we do Bible study, we look at the setting of the feeding of the 5,000 by Jesus, the setting where the people sat down. They were gathered together as church. And then our text says, Jesus took the loaves. You know, I was reading one spiritual writer called Henry Nouwen. Henry Nouwen explains the taking. And he says, we should replace that taking by choosing. And he says, when Jesus took the loaves, it's like every time we come for Holy Communion, there are thousands of hosts in the ciborium, and one is taken and given to us. And Henry Nouwen says that's how we should relate to Jesus. We should see ourselves as taken, chosen. That's who we are. The text says Jesus took the loaves. He took the loaves. Now, in the ritual for the liturgy today, the priest takes the ciborium, it takes it up as offering, an offering. And he says, we should consider ourselves blessed as having been taken. The second thing Jesus did, he gave thanks. Again, in other translations, it says blessed. He blessed the loaves. You know, oftentimes we don't give thanks enough for having been chosen, for having been taken. He says we should give thanks to God for what God has done. And then the third thing that happened is the distribution. That's, you know, these, we call it ritual actions in liturgy. The ritual actions of Jesus. The bread that is taken, the bread that is blessed, the bread is the bread that is distributed to us. That's why it's given. It's given. We come forward and he gives himself to us. And so Jesus, at the feeding of the 5,000, was preparing the people to understand what is going to happen at the Last Supper and on the cross, where he is going to be the chosen one to be offered, to be given. Henry Nouwen says of the 4 ritual actions where the bread is taken, the bread is broken, the bread is blessed, and is distributed. He says, the world only does 2 of those 4 actions. The world will take and they will break us. They don't bless and they don't distribute. They take and they break us. We become broken. That's what the world gives us. And so Henry Nouwen advised that we should try and do the 4. Allow ourselves to be chosen by God. We should thank God for what God is doing in our lives. And we should allow ourselves to be given to human beings and to God. It says oftentimes we take and we do not give back. He says, but Jesus wanted to teach. You know, John's Gospel says, when Andrew told Jesus, there is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. The boy was ready to give to 5,000 people gathered. And he says, we should also learn from that boy who was ready to give. He did not hoard his lunch. He did not become selfish. And he says, he gave to God because he gave to Jesus, and Jesus gave it to the whole people, including the boy himself. And so the text today prepares us for this coming Sunday, where Jesus again is going to bless fish. It says 5 loaves and 2 fish. So we get into this distribution, the taking, the blessing, the breaking, and the distribution. That is the core of spirituality.